This afternoon we're going to be talking about building a SharePoint intranet. My name is Andy Hodges. I'm the CEO of ThinkShare, and I'm going to go through a few things about how you can build a SharePoint intranet, things about the templates, the branding, the limitations, and we're going to uncover some of the other products that you can use instead of out-of-the-box SharePoint. Show you very brief demos, but just to give you an idea of that. And then lastly, we're going to cover the project delivery, so how you actually deliver an intranet. And we've also got a Q&A running, so if you do have any questions and answers as we go along, please leave them in the Q&A. So where would you start with a SharePoint intranet? You've got SharePoint out of the box. If you've got Microsoft 365, so you've got the licenses already. So the cost of implementing a SharePoint out-of-the-box intranet is going to be just on the implementation cost. There's going to be no extra licenses. Now, a lot of customers will come to us and not quite sure where they sit within either using out-of-the-box SharePoint or using an intranet product. So we do a lot of investigation along these lines and ask these questions. So products can or will cost extra on top of SharePoint, and you would be paying a yearly license cost for that product. And then branding. So with SharePoint out of the box, it is minimal branding. You can use brand imagery and rich text editing, but there isn't much you can do apart from what you can configure in SharePoint out of the box. But with a product that sits either on top of SharePoint or separately, you can have considerable or full branding. So if that's important to you and you want to have an engaging intranet above what SharePoint out of the box offers, then a product might be something to consider. With a mobile app, so this is a consideration more and more, you can use a SharePoint app or you can use a Viva Connections card in the Microsoft Teams app, but neither are particularly good user experience. There's a few clicks to get to where you want to go. So it can be used, but sometimes it's not suitable to roll out to your users. So a lot of products on top of SharePoint will offer a intranet app, and you can open it up and see your intranet straight away. You've also got the ability to use a product where it's only the intranet that you can see, whereas a SharePoint app and the Teams app, there's lots more functionality. Licenses, so all users that you'd expect for SharePoint need a Microsoft 365 license, and there's no exception to that. So if you're thinking about deploying it to frontline workers, you will need to buy them a license to view your intranet. But with a product, if it's not based on SharePoint, then sometimes you don't need to buy those Microsoft 365 licenses, and you can just purchase the intranet licenses, which would work out at a lesser cost. The functionality, so whilst SharePoint gives you a lot of functionality, a lot of our customers come to us with a wish list of functionality they would like for an intranet, and often there's some trade-offs that they can't have with SharePoint out of the box. So that's where potentially a product is something that you would consider, and we'll kind of show you some of the functionality that exists in an intranet product. And then the speed, so out of the box SharePoint is a little bit quicker to deploy because you don't have to deploy products and you don't have to amend the branding. So a product may be a month or two more than an out-of-the-box SharePoint intranet. But a lot of this is based on your time to deploy and time to create the content. So a lot of the content editing and content creation would be down to our clients, and that can take up a significant chunk of time in the project. And then the engagement with users. So sometimes a SharePoint out-of-the-box intranet might not be as engaging, and they might not feel like they want to use it as much. It might be suitable for your organization, depending on how strong your brand is. But a product could give more engagement, make the users feel more valued because you've spent the time to deploy your branding into your intranet. So let's look at where you start with creating an out-of-the-box SharePoint intranet, and that would be with a template potentially, or you could just start from scratch. But if you have a look at lookbook.microsoft.com, There are plenty of intranet templates that you can start with, and some that are microsites as well for other things like onboarding. So you can go there and deploy a template into your Microsoft 365 tenancy. Once you've done that, there are some branding options. So this is an important part of any intranet. And with SharePoint Online, there are limited branding options. So you have to create a theme, and you can only use a theme, and you can create and apply that using PowerShell. So you have to connect to your tenant. It needs to be an admin task, and you need to apply that create the theme and apply it into your tenant. And once you've got that theme there, you can use it on any site that you've got. You cannot change what elements are going to change color. So for example, headers, backgrounds to buttons, you can't change where that color changes. You can only change the color of it. So that might be a bit of a limitation if someone wants to amend certain headers into certain colors, or you want to have more than 2 colors. That's not possible with SharePoint themes. You can add a logo to your site, as you'd expect, and you cannot change the fonts and size of the titles. And when I say size of the titles, I mean the ones that exist out of the box. So you can apply your own titles, and I'll show you an example of that on the next slide. But the ones that you have for titles of web parts, you cannot change the size of. So just to give you an idea about how you can make a SharePoint intranet look more appealing, we've worked with some of our customers to use some of the following imagery. So things like replacing web part headers. So as I just mentioned, you can't change the size or the font of headers. So what some of our customers actually do is create their own headers, and they just add those above the existing web parts and turn off the titles for the web parts. You can also use your imagery in your thumbnails. So for example, you can see here that a customer has used the brand in a thumbnail, and that's quite useful when you are creating a nice looking intranet. So you can put those in all your news items and all your events, and then you can see those are available on the homepage, and it gives a really good brand experience. The other thing you can do is create some custom real text editing and almost create your own brand guidelines for creating text. So you can have different colored fonts, different size text within the rich text editor. So that does give a good look and feel. And on the right hand side, you can see a corporate imagery. So you can add just images. So you can create images with your font and your brand colors, and just add them into the clickable areas and link them through to the pages that you want to link them through to. Because you can only use the out-of-the-box font in SharePoint, so that might be something that you can actually bring your font into an out-of-the-box intranet. So just to give you a bit of background about the limitations of SharePoint Online, you can quickly reach limits of configuration. So we often get asked, can we remove the headers of news pages? And the answer is yes, but not without running PowerShell scripts. So there are only certain tasks that you can do as a content editor, and some others might have to be scripts or custom coded web parts. So what you'll find is there are limits, and we always recommend not doing too many what I'd call customizations to SharePoint, because they may not be supported in the next iteration of the release. You may not be able to have the resource to support those as well. So we always recommend keeping as close as you can to out-of-the-box SharePoint. There's not a decent people directory. So when you're searching for people, you have to go to the organizational search and find the people that you need. You can kind of link it through and open that directly, but it's not the best best experience for your users. There is, as I mentioned, limiting branding and fonts. You don't get any notification alerts. So some functionality that we get asked quite a lot is around notifications, alerts for the intranet, and that's not possible out of the box with SharePoint. And also document acknowledgement. So I've got a new policy, I've got a new page, which users have read it, which users have accepted that they've seen that particular document. And that bit of functionality doesn't exist in SharePoint out of the box. And it doesn't have a particularly user-friendly mobile app. So as I mentioned, the experience of going to the SharePoint app or the Teams app, where you're kind of seeing other content first, rather than seeing the homepage of your intranet, isn't the best experience for your users. So what I want to do now is just jump into a functionality demo, just to give you an idea of what you can do with SharePoint out of the box. So what I've done here is deployed one of the lookbook templates and just changed a few things on it, just to give you an idea of what is possible. So what I want to do is show you the branding capabilities to start with, and then talk you through a bit of the functionality that's available. So in terms of branding, we've got a number of options to change settings. So we can change the look of the theme. So here we've got a ThinkShare theme, but we can also change it to any other theme that we've got in this particular development environment. So as you can see, when we change the theme, there are certain colors and certain buttons and headers that change color. Now, unfortunately, you can't, like I say, can't change, what changes color or change certain elements. You're restricted to just changing the theme overall. At the top of the page, so what we often recommend and customers will do as well is change the organizational theme. So you've got that option as well. So you can go to the admin center. You can go to the settings for your organization, go to the organizational profile and change the customer theme. So there's a default theme that's applied, and we can change the color, and that will change the top banner across the whole of Microsoft 365. So that's usually something that a global admin will need to do. It's not something a content editor or an intranet product owner can do. So we can also add a logo, but we don't tend to add a logo often to the top banner because it looks a bit better on the SharePoint site. But some organizations will want to add a logo as well, so you can do that. What's good about the themes now is probably within the last year, as you can add multiple themes. So you can add up to 5. So if you've got subsidiaries with different branding, you can add a different theme, and you can then target that at a Microsoft 365 group. So that's quite good, as I mentioned, if you've got different parts of the company, different branding. And you can have a different logo and a different color for those users as well. So that's how you kind of get the standardized look and feel of this page, where you've got the purple banner at the top and then the purple header here. There are other branding capabilities as well. So in terms of headers, you can change the primary color to a gray or just a white header. So you do have a few options, and you can change the logo. But out with that, there's not too much you can do. Within the actual content, you can see that we've got some text and some headers. So headers, header 1, 2, and 3 will take the theme primary color as well. So you might have seen that change in color when I changed some of the colors in the theme. So if you are using headers, always use the header 1, 2, and 3, so that if you do change the theme colors, they will change also. And a lot of the other kind of the niceties that you can see here in terms of the text are also just text that's been formatted correctly. So as part of an intranet deployment, you may want to give some guidelines on what the text should look like. So we'll just pop into some functionality now around an intranet. Some basic functionality is the ability to amend the header. So you get quite a nice interface for amending the navigation on the header here, and you can add new items into the navigation. And once you've finished, you can just save. So fairly easy to create a navigation that works. One of the key points of creating an intranet is to ensure that you've got an information architecture that works for your users. So the navigation is really key to that. And as part of the intranet workshops we run, we understand or try to understand what that navigation should look like, so that any user coming to the intranet can find the information they need. So it should try and match your organization. There is the ability to link sites together in a SharePoint hub and a hub site. So you can have multiple sites under a hub site. But what that does is puts another layer of navigation above the logo, and you can then add that navigation across all the hub sites. But what we say is, if your organization isn't too big and you only need the one site, just keep it to one site, because that 2 levels of navigation can get a bit cumbersome in our experience. But if you are a large organization, you will need to use the hub site functionality within SharePoint. So we'll just show you a bit of functionality now, just to give you a kind of taster of what you can do with SharePoint. So you'll see that once we head into the editing experience, we get the ability to add new sections, and we can add a section and add different sections with columns. So if I wanted to add in a 3-column, it's fairly easy, and I get all the options for the web parts that are available. So adding web parts is as simple as hovering over the area that you want to add a web part to, getting a plus, and then adding the web part in. So a couple of bits of functionality here. We've got the news section. So what we often do with the intranets we create is create almost a tick box that says show on homepage, and you can create a column in the pages library with a tick box, so that your content editors can say, yes, I want to show it on the homepage. You can also create a choice field, which is department. So on each department, when you've got a department page, you could just show the news for that department. So your content editors are tagging news with a particular department. One of the most popular web parts is the quick links. So this web part here that you can see is a quick link web part, and these are just different layouts. It's called a film strip, which I think is probably one of the better layouts for the quick links. It gives a bit more of a image-based navigation. So what you'll see is that is fairly used across any intranet, whether that's SharePoint or a product. You've also got things like the organizational chart. So if I was to add in the organizational chart here, and then you can type some of the name. Good old Adele Vance will appear, and then when it's published, you can then see who reports to Adele. In this case, no one. So that will show on any page. So if you were to put that on a department page, you could show the people that were in a department. I mentioned people search. So one of the 2 main reasons why our customers will choose a product over SharePoint out of the box is people search or the branding. Now, the people search can be modified should you wish to with search templates, but that's going to the next step and the next level. But the out of the box people search is fairly limited. So you get a people card if you're searching the whole of the organization, or you get a simple card for a person. So what we do is tend to just, if we do use out of the box, we'll link through to the full people search from a button on the home page, and you'll get this this list of people. It'll just be in the order that that SharePoint wants to show you those people. So there's no particular ability to do it in A to Z. You can deploy SharePoint framework web parts and create a people search. But again, that's custom coding that you may not want to do. And then just some other functionality on the homepage. So one good bit of functionality that we'd like to see with things like company end of year reports or latest presentations is a file view. So we can quickly add in a presentation into a page, and without having to open that particular presentation, the user can scroll through the presentation and see what that content has been uploaded to SharePoint looks like. Some other functionality that you may want to add into an intranet is a Twitter web part. So here we've got just the Microsoft one, it does by default. You can quickly get your tweets onto your intranet using this out-of-the-box web part. So what you will find is that a lot of the intranet products have a LinkedIn post web part. They might have Facebook or Instagram as well. But out of the box, you just get the Twitter web part. Fairly basic functionality. So that's sort of an idea of what you can achieve with a SharePoint out-of-the-box intranet. Hopefully that's given you a kind of a quick overview of what's available and what functionality there is. So I'll just head back to the presentation. So what I want to show you next is what you would do if you didn't want to use SharePoint out of the box. You need some extra functionality. So this is kind of, there's two choices essentially when you're looking at something other than SharePoint out of the box in terms of the architectural choice. So one would be to purchase a product that sits within SharePoint, and the other would be either to purchase something that you can install into Azure or would sit in someone else's Azure or data center, which would be in a product external to your tenant. So a SharePoint Internet product, if you're purchasing a product that sits on top of SharePoint, there are certain things that you've got that you don't have to worry about. So that's such as the product sitting within your security boundary. So all the existing security that you've set up, the Azure AD accounts will work. You don't need to do anything, and the product is installed into your Microsoft 365 tenant, and you can just use it on top of SharePoint. You can still use the existing functionality within SharePoint. So that's all the web parts that come with it, like the Twitter one that I just showed you. You can still use all those if you're purchasing a SharePoint Internet product. The other products that are available within Microsoft 365, such as Power Automate, Power Apps, Viva Topics, can all be used still when you're buying a SharePoint Internet product. And that means that you can still build applications or pull in content from those different products, or trigger things like a Power Automate workflow based on something in SharePoint. So you're not reliant on what the internet product provider has built to communicate with Microsoft 365. You've got all the native Microsoft 365 functionality. You can extend the functionality, so everything you expect from a corporate intranet is generally available within a SharePoint Internet product. On the branding and fonts, you can apply your corporate brand. You can apply your colors, your primary, your secondary color, third colors. You can change individual sections, individual headers to a greater extent with a SharePoint Internet product. Not to a full extent, because you're still limited by the SharePoint interface and what has been built on top of SharePoint. So that's a bit about a SharePoint Internet product that you could purchase on top. And then the second option is an external internet product. So as I mentioned, either in someone else's data center, potentially installed into your Azure environment, but generally hosted elsewhere. So Some of the things that I suppose to think about for an external internet product, they're outside the security boundary. So you would need to make sure that your the security is up to scratch. You would need to make sure that your due diligence has been done on that product, even though it's in use by X many organizations around the world. Every time you come to deploy an external internet product, every organization is going to want to do their security checks on that product. The look and feel of an external internet product is a lot nicer. It's not restricted to SharePoint, so the product provider has created a nice looking product that is going to be more appealing to your users. And I often use the example that, why do people buy an Apple product over an Android product? And often it's just the look and feel and the way they use it and the user experience that they get when they're using it. There's not too much tangible about why, but it's just a personal choice. You are restricted when you buy an external internet product to the integrations that product provider has created. So whilst a lot of products will now integrate into Microsoft 365 to pull out recent documents, recent sites, linking to the teams that you've got, you are restricted to the integration that has been built. So you can only do so much with building out further integrations. There is improved administration, so you're not constrained by the pages library or the SharePoint settings that you've got in the back end of SharePoint. So a lot of these internet products will have a nice administration interface. And one of the last 2 points here to do with frontline workers and mergers and acquisitions are some of the biggest points when you're considering an external internet product. So frontline or seasonal workers, if you've got a SharePoint out of the box or you're using an internet product on top of SharePoint, you will need to license them for Microsoft 365. A external internet product, you will not need to do that. So you're just paying for the external internet product license. So it can work out cheaper if you've got a large section of the organization that don't have email and don't have Teams, but you want to give them an intranet, then an external internet product might work out a lot cheaper. Mergers and acquisitions. So something that, depending on what industry you're in, we've got a few customers that have acquired 5 or 6 companies recently. And in that instance, they're all on different technology stacks. So having an external intranet might be a good way to bring everyone together without having to migrate them all onto your technology stack. The other reason for buying an external internet product is you might have a upcoming tenant migration that you know is going to happen in the next year or two. So you might be moving to your parent company tenant, for example. Purchasing an external internet product means that you don't need to migrate that intranet at a later date. You can just repoint the intranet to the new Microsoft 365 tenant. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just show you kind of the functionality that you get with a couple of internet products. The first being a product built on top of SharePoint, and then the second one being an external product that integrates into SharePoint and Microsoft 365. So this one is a SharePoint product. It's installed into SharePoint. It's by a company called Involv. And as you can see, it looks a lot different than SharePoint. There's all the web parts that they've created have their own custom branding and look and feel. But with this type of product, you can still change the theme, change the skins. So you can change the way it looks, and there's some default ones. And so straight away you can see that even without doing any CSS or any custom coding, you can change the look and feel of the intranet to something like that. But if you want to apply your branding and font, you can change all of the CSS and change the fonts that exist. So you're still limited a little bit by what SharePoint provides, but you have got a lot more control than SharePoint out of the box. So I want to just show you a bit of functionality. So in terms of quick links here, I've got the ability to add in my own apps. So that can be from a list of apps that are sent out by the company to adding my actual own links, adding in a new link that I want to point to an app that I use regularly. So a bit more personalization there. Got things like department templates. So if I've got a HR department, I can create a template and I can have all the HR jobs, the FAQs for HR, and the links again for the HR department. So a bit more functionality than out-of-the-box SharePoint. The news and events has an archive, which is fairly difficult to create in SharePoint out of the box. So you've got all the ability to search through all the archive news, to view all the events that are coming up as well in a bit of a nicer interface. There's also the people directory that I mentioned. So you've got some nice little cards showing everyone who works in your company. Things like job boards as well. So this is a common bit of functionality that exists in Intranet products. You've got some how-do-Is, so the FAQs that are dotted around and categorized, so we can put the HR FAQs on the HR page, IT FAQs on the IT page. So really providing people with information. And then there's a personal dashboard where it pulls all the information from Delve and from the graph to show you your recent insights, or your My Documents, or your My OneDrive files. Pulls in your calendar as well. So that's just a really brief, quick tour of an Intranet product. I won't go into too much detail, but it just gives you an idea of what is out there in terms of building an Intranet on top of SharePoint, if SharePoint out of the box isn't suitable. And then lastly is an Intranet product that called Omnia, that is built in Azure, this particular one. And as you can see here, it looks completely different from SharePoint. It's got some nice little web parts that have been custom built. Someone has kindly changed my version to Swedish in the last hour, which is fantastic. So here we've got, just to give you an idea of what you can do with the product and the way it looks. You can see that this mega menu looks completely different from SharePoint. So there's the ability to style it how the product has been created. So if you're looking for a product that looks nothing like SharePoint, and you're really invested in your brand and you want to apply the brand down to a minute level, then an Intranet product that sits outside of SharePoint, outside your tenant, but has integration into the data, it might be the way to go. So for example, we can navigate through the organizational chart, and this particular product is actually built pages per team. So they're navigating through the organizational chart to a team page. So it's some completely different functionality than you would expect within SharePoint. And then just a bit about some other functionality, again, that you wouldn't be able to build in SharePoint, an onboarding hub with things like the links to the mobile apps, the ability to change your profile. There's a nice little interface there. There's welcome tutorials that you can set up and customize. We've got the ability so we've got a nice people directory as well. Again, something that we didn't have, and this looks a bit nicer than the SharePoint product because they're able to start from scratch and design a nice interface for the people directory. We've got an official documents hub where you can publish policies, procedures. There's a learning center, so a mini LMS. It won't replace a full learning management system, but you can create little courses and follow the course through, view the information that you need to see, and attend those courses. And some of the courses will have stepped sections, so you can actually go through all the course, do a knowledge check, and pass the course and say you've completed it, and then that will then tell your manager that you've completed a course. There are custom communities because it doesn't have Yammer in it. There's custom communities that have been created. So again, some nice functionality. There's a nice location page that you've got, so you can list all your locations. And lastly, there is a project center. So I appreciate I've gone through this fairly fast, but the recording will be available at the end, so you can have another look at this if you want to. So you can store your current projects, your completed projects, and these link through, as you can see, to Microsoft Team or a SharePoint site if you've got them. So you've got a complete project directory, and something that SharePoint out of the box does lack is the ability to have a directory of your projects or your sites that you're currently using. So hopefully that's given you a taste of what is possible with not only SharePoint out of the box, a SharePoint product, and a product that's built outside SharePoint. And that's really where we try to get to with any of our customers. If they come to us saying they need an intranet, we try and give kind of a balanced position of whether they need SharePoint out of the box, a SharePoint product, or an external product, and work through the benefits and the pros and cons of each. So just a bit about when technical tasks that you may need to do or may want to do when you're deploying a SharePoint intranet or any of these three types of intranets. So you may want to create and apply a theme using PowerShell. So that's an admin task. You might want to set up Viva connections. So you can see here the icon, the intranet. So for a SharePoint-based intranet, either out of the box or a product, you can add in an icon into the top left of Teams. So you've got access to your intranet straight from your Teams client. If you do set up Viva connections, what we've found is that the same Viva connections gets deployed to the Teams mobile app, but there's nothing there. So whereas you've got an icon and link through to the home site, to your SharePoint site in your desktop Teams client, in the Teams mobile app, nothing happens. So what you'd want to do there is deploy a Viva Connections card, which is just a link to your intranet. Again, not a great experience because that might be the only card that you want to deploy, but it's a way to kind of tidy up that user journey from the Teams app on a mobile to your intranet. We recommend every intranet does this, and we've never done an intranet that hasn't, which is set the Edge and Chrome home pages through a group policy object. So set those home pages to your intranet homepage, and that just means that everyone will see the intranet when they're opening the browser. And without doing that, you're not going to get the engagement that you require, and you're not going to drive the traffic to the content that you want users to see. Change the organizational theme, as I showed you before. Change the color of it at least. Maybe put your logo in if that's something you want to do. But you'll need to get a global admin to do that, and install the product if you're not going to be using out the box SharePoint. So installing a SharePoint product can take a little bit of time. It's not always straightforward. This negotiation of making sure that the security of the accounts you're requesting is there. So trying to request the minimal required roles to deploy the intranet is often something that takes a bit of time to talk through with your internal IT department. And then just a bit about what I want to do now, just show you how you would actually create an intranet and the process you go through. And so this is a workshop agenda that we have for our customers, and this is something we did a few weeks back for a customer. So this is the first sort of workshop we run at the start of a project, and we try to understand the information architecture, the sitemap of the intranet. We go through the types of content, the requirements, what should be on the homepage, and discuss this all through with our users. So once we've got this, we can then start to the next part of the project, which is either looking at intranet personas or creating some wireframes. So creating some wireframes, here's one we did earlier. we create it in black and white just to have the functional conversations. Even with SharePoint out of the box, it's a good idea to have the functional conversations outside of the look and feel. So what should it be doing rather than what it should look like? And then once you've had the functional conversations and got those signed off, you're then looking at the design, which is here. This was a one we did for a company called Ventient. And that's the end of the webinar. So hopefully found that interesting. If you do have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A and we'll either answer those now, or if there are no questions, we'll finish up the webinar. So thanks for joining us and appreciate your time in coming to listen to information about building a SharePoint intranet.